October 4th, 2019. 10 days after weeping on the stand in a police murder trial that gripped the nation, a key witness is found, shot dead in his own parking lot. Dallas PD called it a drug deal gone wrong. Not everyone believed them. These are the most chilling times when witnesses were killed over interviews. Dallas, October 2019. Just 10 days after a young man took the stand in one of the most explosive police murder trials in recent memory, he was gunned down in the parking lot outside his own apartment. His name was Joshua Brown, and the timing? Impossible to ignore. Joshua Brown wasn't supposed to be famous. He was just a neighbor. He lived one floor above Botham Jean, the 26-year-old accountant shot dead in his own living room by off-duty Dallas officer Amber Geiger. When prosecutors needed someone to humanize Botham, someone who could speak to the man behind the headlines, they called Joshua to the stand. His testimony was simple, quiet, devastating.
No, I can't say I seen him. I heard him in there.
Okay, when you say you heard him, what do you mean?
Heard him singing every morning.
Okay, you heard him singing. What kind of things did you hear him sing?
He spoke about hearing Botham singing, about the routines of a good neighbor, and in a courtroom full of tension, Joshua broke down crying on the stand. His testimony helped paint the picture jurors needed. Geiger was convicted of murder, sentenced to 10 years, and then came the moment that divided the country. Botham's brother, hugging the woman who killed him right there in the courtroom. But while the nation argued about forgiveness, Joshua Brown was still living his life in Dallas until October 4th. Shot multiple times in the parking lot of his apartment complex, dead on the scene. The reaction was instant. 10 days after testifying against a cop, people weren't buying coincidence. Host Jacqueline Lukeman of the Black Agenda Report laid out exactly why the timing felt so suspicious to so many.
As the nation was still debating the public expressions of forgiveness by Black people toward ex-cop and convicted murderer Amber Geiger,
for many in the Black community, it wasn't paranoia, it was pattern recognition. Glenn Ford, executive editor of the Black Agenda Report, captured exactly what so many were feeling.
Glenn is the co-founder and executive editor of the Black Agenda Report and the author of The Big Lie, an analysis of U.S. media coverage of the Grenada invasion. Glenn, thank you so much for joining me today.
Attorney Lee Merritt, who represented Botham Jean's family, immediately called for a federal investigation. Activists pointed fingers at law enforcement. Social media exploded with theories. How does a key witness in a police murder trial just end up dead a week and a half later? Dallas police scrambled to get ahead of the story. Within days, they held a press conference and named 3 suspects, all from Louisiana. Their claim: this had nothing to do with Amber Geiger, nothing to do with Botham Jean. It was, they insisted, a drug deal gone wrong.
A witness in Amber Geiger's murder trial was killed in the parking lot outside his apartment. Now, a lot of you have questions about Josh Brown's murder, and tonight, Dallas police want to put those rumors to rest.
Assistant Chief Avery Moore stepped up to the podium and tried to put every rumor to bed, addressing the conspiracy theories head on.
As you know, there's been speculation and rumors that have been shared by community leaders claiming that Mr. Brown's death was related to the Amber Geiger trial, and somehow the Dallas Police Department was responsible. I assure you that is simply not true.
According to Moore, the suspects had driven from Alexandria, Louisiana, specifically to do business with Joshua. Police said an argument turned violent. One suspect was shot in the chest. Joshua was shot and killed in the exchange.
Jacarius Mitchell gets out of the vehicle and he states that Joshua Brown orders him back into the vehicle and shoots him in the chest.
Then came the part designed to shut the conversation down completely. A search warrant on Brown's apartment turned up what police said proved the drug motive.
Sources say the men knew each other and had done illegal business before. Police ran a warrant on Brown's apartment where they found 12 pounds of marijuana, 143 grams of THC cartridges, and $4,000 in cash.
12 pounds of marijuana, 143 grams of THC cartridges, $4,000 in cash. To Dallas PD, this was the whole story. Case closed. The message was clear. Brown wasn't a martyr, he was a dealer. But Joshua's family wasn't buying it, not even a little.
Brown's family issued a statement saying they want an independent investigation because they feel the public won't trust DPD's results.
Their attorney, Lee Merritt, publicly questioned the timeline, the convenience of the narrative, and why a man under that kind of public scrutiny would be conducting a major drug deal in his own parking lot 10 days after national television cameras captured his face. And critics noted something else: how conveniently the police framed the suspects, how quickly the drug deal narrative came together. Glenn Ford zeroed in on the racial optics of how the suspects were presented to the public.
When we saw the goings-on in that courtroom, initially with the verdict, there was deep satisfaction in the Black community that a white police officer.
For critics, the official story answered the easy questions and avoided the hard ones. Why Joshua? Why now? And why did the police, the very institution on trial in the court of public opinion, get to be the sole authors of the explanation? Ford argued that skepticism wasn't conspiracy thinking, it was history doing its job. Ferguson protesters had been turning up dead for years under murky circumstances. The FBI had been labeling black activists as extremists. History gave people every reason to question the official line.
They're justified by history. Any black person that is not suspicious of a police story is, in a sense, out of their mind. But the particulars of this case are quite suspicious. 2
of the 3 suspects were eventually arrested. Charges were filed. On paper, the case was solved. A drug robbery. A tragic coincidence of timing. Nothing more. But for many who watched Joshua weep on that witness stand, the wound never closed. Because whether you believe the drug deal story or you don't, one fact sits untouched at the center of it all. A young man told the truth in a courtroom about a police officer who killed his neighbor, and 10 days later, he was silenced forever. Joshua Brown was 28 years old, and his name belongs on the list of witnesses whose testimony cost them everything. Brakpan, South Africa, December 5th, 2025, just after 8:30 at night. Marius Vlam van der Merwe pulls up to his own gate with his wife and 2 children in the car. He never makes it inside. The news of his death would dominate South African headlines within hours. A state witness, gunned down on his own doorstep just weeks after testifying.
Well, now lead story this hour. Marius van der Merwe, who testified as witness D before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, will be laid to rest later today. This 2 weeks after he was brutally shot and killed.
For months, the 41-year-old security company owner had been living as a ghost. He answered only on one secure line. He avoided his work phones. He told his sister Natasha they'd been tampered with. And he stopped visiting the family home, even as their mother lay recovering from a stroke. Natasha didn't understand it at first. She was furious with him. Why wouldn't he come see their mother? Then he told her the truth. He wasn't avoiding the family. He was being hunted.
That's when he explained to me that he's being followed. On the 24th of November, he did come and visit his mom. He was so quick here because he knew he was being followed. That was his words to me.
Marius had a nickname, Vlam, Afrikaans for flame, and behind closed doors at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry, he had a code name too, Witness D. He'd walked in and lit a fire under one of the biggest police corruption scandals in South African history. His testimony implicated Julius Mkhwanazi, the now suspended Ekurhuleni Metropolitan Police Chief. He described torture. He described suffocation, a method called tubing. And he described something far more disturbing, helping dispose of a body in a dam after a suspect was killed during an unofficial interrogation back in April 2022. His own voice from the commission recordings walked listeners through the horror step by step.
I asked whether a suspect talked, and DeAndre responded that he will never ever talk again. Chief Soup, Julius Mkhwanazi, JD Mkhwanazi arrived at the scene, and we were informed that this is the chief.
That testimony was delivered off-site, off-camera, under the pseudonym Witness D to keep him safe. It didn't work. They found him anyway. And here's the chilling part. Marius knew they were coming. Journalist Yosef Abramji later revealed that Vlam had been prepared to drop his anonymity entirely. He believed he was going to be killed within days, regardless of what he did. Back in September, when his mother was hospitalized, he'd sent Natasha a voice note. Someone had shot at him the night before. The family didn't press him. They never did. That silence was deliberate. A family pact to keep everyone safe. A few days before his testimony, he finally told Natasha the full truth.
We didn't ask questions. We knew what type of work he did, what was his job thing. We didn't ask questions, asked no questions, lies. He was very secretive about his work that he did.
Ask no questions. Hear no lies. Marius kept them in the dark to keep them alive. The irony is brutal. He protected everyone except himself. The hit itself was surgical. Gunmen were waiting. The moment Vlam stepped out to open his gate with his wife and kids still in the car, they opened fire.
Just came home with his wife at the gate after I alighted. When he was about to open the gate, he was shot.
His partner Leanne McLean was left sobbing on their couch next to his techies, their Christmas tree still standing behind her. In a handwritten note passed to reporters, she wrote that she'd lost her love, her children had lost their father, and the country had lost a hero. Natasha believes she knows exactly what her brother's final moments look like. If she knows Vlam, she said, he begged them, not for his own life. He begged them not to do it in front of his wife and children. President Cyril Ramaphosa condemned the killing. 3 persons of interest were pulled in. Justice Minister Mamaloko Kubayi admitted Vlam had refused formal witness protection, a decision now under urgent review. The Madlanga Commission itself came under mounting pressure to guarantee the safety of the witnesses still left to testify.
The tragedy has now put mounting pressure on the Madlanga Commission to ensure the safety of its witnesses.
But the damage was done. The message to every future whistleblower in South Africa had been delivered in full view of a wife and 2 children at a suburban gate. Commentators began warning that the country was sliding into something far darker than corruption. Marius Vlam van der Merwe told the truth. He named names. He knew the cost. And when witnesses get killed over interviews, the silence that follows is the loudest sound a country can make. Prayagraj, February 24th, 2023. 44 seconds. That's all it took for a team of assassins to silence the man who had survived bullets, bombs, and nearly 2 decades of threats. Umesh Pal wasn't just another victim. He was the prime eyewitness in the 2005 murder of BSP MLA Raju Pal. And on this afternoon, the country would watch his final moments unfold on camera.
Now in Uttar Pradesh's Prayagraj, in just 44 seconds, a key eyewitness was shot down in broad daylight, and this has led to a massive showdown.
To understand why Umesh Pal was gunned down in broad daylight, you have to go back 18 years. January 25th, 2005. Newly elected BSP MLA Raju Pal was ambushed and shot dead in Prayagraj. The man accused of orchestrating that killing was a name that would haunt Uttar Pradesh politics for decades. Atiq Ahmed, a former MP with a criminal empire stretching across the state. And standing between Atiq Ahmed and freedom was one man, Umesh Pal. He had been with Raju that day. He saw everything, and he refused to stay quiet. For years, Umesh fought a lonely battle. He filed furs, he testified, he begged for security. He was allegedly kidnapped, tortured, and pressured to change his statement. But he never did. Then came February 24th, 2023. Umesh was returning home in Prayagraj's Sulam Sarai area. He never made it inside. The cameras mounted outside. His home caught everything.
Now, as per the autopsy report, 7 bullets were fired at Umesh. A total of 13 injuries have been reported from his body so far. On Saturday, Umesh was cremated in the presence of beefed-up security.
The footage is chilling. Assailants, already in position, moved with military precision. Umesh tried to run. They chased him into a narrow alley, weapons drawn, cutting off every escape route. Then came the bombs. Crude, handmade explosives hurled to cover their escape, filling the street with thick white smoke as shocked neighbors watched from their windows.
Mafia on rampage in Uttar Pradesh's Prayagraj. Shocking new twist in the 2005 BSP MLA Raju Pal's murder case.
The post-mortem told the rest of the story. 13 injuries, 7 bullet wounds. His 2 police gunners were also killed in the attack. One man's decision to testify had finally cost him everything. Inside his home, his wife collapsed into grief. 2 small children, a husband who had spent 18 years looking over his shoulder, and now nothing but a desperate plea to anyone who would listen. The murder didn't just shake Prayagraj, it detonated inside the Uttar Pradesh Assembly. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath rose, visibly furious, and pointed straight at the opposition benches, accusing the Samajwadi Party of nurturing the very mafia responsible for decades. He went further, naming the political lineage he believed protected these figures. The opposition fired back. Samajwadi Party chief Akhilesh Yadav said the brazenness of the attack, bombs going off in a city street, proved the government's law and order claims were hollow.
सबसे महत्वपूर्ण ये है कि इलाहाबाद में जो घटना हुई है, मुख्य गवाह अधिवक्ता उसकी खुलेआम हत्या होना, खुलेआम लोगों ने शूटिंग देखी है.
He didn't stop there. He called the government a complete failure, unable to contain what he described as a return to gangland violence. But the CM wasn't finished. His closing line in the assembly became the headline of the day, and a promise that would soon be tested on the streets of Prayagraj.
The UP government has assured stringent action against the assailants.
Deputy CM Brajesh Pathak followed with an official assurance. The special task force was already in motion, and every accused would be brought in.
उच्च स्तरीय जांच चल रही है, एसटीएफ को लगाया गया है, इंटेलिजेंस और विजिलेंस दोनों काम कर रहे हैं. सभी अभियुक्तों की गिरफ्तारी होगी, दूध का दूध पानी का पानी होगा. जो लोग पर्दे के पीछे हैं उनको भी हम पर्दाफाश करेंगे. पूरे मामले को फास्ट ट्रैक कोर्ट में ले जाएंगे.
The investigation moved fast. The STF rolled in. Atek Ahmed's sons were detained. His wife, Shaista Parveen, went on the run, and Prayagraj's police commissioner made the government's intentions crystal clear. This wasn't just about the shooters.
Atiq Ahmed was the main accused in the 2005 Raju Pal murder case. Atiq had earlier allegedly abducted deceased eyewitness Umesh Pal and threatened him not to make a statement on the case.
What followed in the weeks after Umesh Pal's murder became one of the most talked about chapters in modern Indian policing. Encounters, arrests, bulldozers, and ultimately a stunning, nationally televised moment that shocked the country. But that's a story for another time. Umesh Pal's story ends here, on a quiet street in Prayagraj, with a man who simply refused to lie. He was the witness who wouldn't break, and in the end, that's exactly why they came for him. Saturday afternoon on I-20 in downtown Atlanta, Jason Phillips is driving to work at Fox Brothers BBQ when another car cuts him off. A simple hand gesture. That's all it took to turn a routine commute into a shooting. The story hit Atlanta airwaves fast, and the very first images told viewers everything they needed to know about how violent this encounter had become.
Now at 5:30, a car riddled with bullet holes after a road rage encounter on an Atlanta highway.
Phillips was heading through one of the busiest stretches of highway in the city, right near the I-75-85 interchange. Traffic was heavy, cars everywhere. The kind of Saturday afternoon where every driver just wants to get where they're going. Then somebody cut him off. Phillips did what a lot of drivers do. He reacted. A nonverbal exchange, nothing more. But the man in the other vehicle didn't let it go. He pulled out a gun. At first, Phillips thought it was a scare tactic. A flash of metal meant to intimidate him into backing down. He didn't even hear the shots. It wasn't until he felt the warmth spreading down his leg that the reality hit him. A bullet had torn into his leg. The gun wasn't just for show, but when he finally processed what had just happened, one detail burned itself into his memory.
Kind of a face you'll never forget kind of situation.
This is what Jason Phillips' car looked like just moments after he saw that face. Multiple bullet holes through his passenger door.
That face is now the key to the entire investigation. Phillips is certain he could pick the shooter out of a lineup. Police are searching for a white Nissan Maxima with 2 men inside. It disappeared into Atlanta traffic within seconds. But here's the thing about shooting someone on I-20 on a Saturday afternoon. You're not doing it in the shadows. You're doing it surrounded by witnesses, drivers in neighboring lanes, people with dash cams, commuters who watched the whole thing unfold through their windshields and kept driving. That's exactly the point Phillips wanted to drive home when he spoke directly to anyone who shared the road with him that day.
There was too much traffic for somebody not to see something.
And Atlanta police say their investigation continues.
He's right. Somebody saw something. In Atlanta traffic, you are never truly alone on the road. The aftermath has been brutal. Phillips can't work. The paychecks from Fox Brothers have stopped, but the medical bills haven't. His co-workers, the people he calls his work family, have rallied around him during recovery. But support doesn't pay rent, and it doesn't deliver. May 13th, 2017. Maurice Antonio Kent, street name Savage Dews, fires multiple rounds into a crowd outside a Brookhaven, Georgia nightclub. A rival gang member drops. A security guard goes down too. Kent flees, tosses the gun from a moving car, and gets arrested minutes later. But that shooting? That was just the beginning. Kent wasn't just some random shooter. He was a leader of the 135 Pirates, a blood-affiliated gang that started in Compton, California, and spread its roots deep into northwest Georgia. Kent ran things around Cartersville and Rome, and from behind bars he was about to set something much darker in motion. While sitting in custody, Kent found out that a 17-year-old fellow gang member, a kid, had been interviewed by law enforcement after the nightclub shooting. The teenager may have witnessed what happened, and in gang culture, talking to police, even just being in the same room as a detective, can get you labeled one thing: a snitch. Kent suspected the worst, and that suspicion became a death sentence. 2 days. That's all the time it took. Members of the 135 Pirates devised a plan. They lured the teenager out to Bartow County, a rural stretch of northwest Georgia, under some pretense. And when they got him there, they shot him, execution style, with Kent's own gun, the same weapon he'd used at the nightclub. They left that boy's body on a quiet country road like he was nothing. 17 years old, his whole life ahead of him, gone. Because a gang leader behind bars decided he might have talked. Now here's the thing that makes this case even more chilling. This wasn't Kent's first act of extreme violence. 8 months before the nightclub shooting, he'd already committed a drive-by in Cartersville, firing on a man standing in his own front yard. After that one, Kent dumped the gun into Lake Allatoona. He probably thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The FBI pulled that firearm from the bottom of the lake. They matched the cartridge casings and a bullet from the drive-by directly back to Kent's weapon. This wasn't a man who was careful. This was a man who was reckless and violent and surrounded by people willing to do whatever he said. The murder of that teenager wasn't a one-man operation. 8 gang members played a role. 8 people conspired to end a child's life over a suspicion, not proof. A suspicion. When the federal case finally came together under RICO conspiracy charges, Kent was found guilty on all counts. RICO conspiracy, violent crime in aid of racketeering, discharging a firearm during those crimes, and felon in possession. The judge handed down 40 years, but Kent didn't act alone, not even close. Christopher Nwanjoku, known as Problem, A 135 Pyrus leader from Lawrenceville, 25 years. Jamel Dupree Hughes, who went by Savage, pleaded guilty to murder in aid of racketeering, 26 years and 2 months. Cedric Sams Jr., known as Awal, 20 years. Michael Kent, Maurice's own twin brother, who went by Wicked, 20 years. Jennifer Fouts, called Rose, who aided and abetted the murder, 12 years. Deshaun Dory, 10 years. And the last domino, Gary Terrell Davis, known as Bodie, sentenced in November 2022 to 7 years. 8 people, all behind bars. Combined, over 160 years of prison time for a gang that was willing to kill a child over a suspicion. FBI Special Agent in charge Carrie Farley didn't mince words. She said the members of the 135th Street Pirates were willing to violently assault and kill people for the smallest perceived sign of disrespect. The smallest perceived sign. That's what it took. A teenager sits in a room with a detective, and days later, he's dead on a country road. And as U.S. Attorney Ryan Buchanan himself acknowledged, the gang culture that promoted this violence, it's still out there. At-risk teens remain vulnerable to the same lure that trapped that 17-year-old boy. The same lure that ultimately got him killed. He never snitched his way into danger. He was born into it. And the man who ordered his death from a jail cell, he's spending the next 4 decades behind bars. This time, for good. Scott Miller thought he was being careful when Fox 11 News came calling in February 2001, wanting to do a piece on one of the most violent white supremacist gangs in Southern California. Miller agreed to talk. But he had conditions. His voice would be disguised. His face would be hidden. What he didn't think about were his tattoos. And that mistake cost him his life. Miller was a founding member of the gang. The news segment focused on a pending case against known leaders who were on trial for conspiracy to commit murder. To the outside world, it was just another crime story. But inside the gang, it was a declaration of war. Miller had aired what they called dirty laundry. And even though his identity was supposedly concealed, those tattoos on screen were like a signature. Fellow members knew exactly who was talking. The target was on his back from that moment forward. March 8, 2002, Miller showed up to a party in Costa Mesa. A man named Billy Joe Johnson, a fellow gang member with 3 prior strike convictions, was there too. Johnson allegedly lured M. Iller away from the party with a simple excuse. He wanted to buy drugs in Anaheim. They'd come right back. They never came back. Johnson drove Miller to an apartment complex in Anaheim, and waiting in the alley were 2 men, Michael Allen Lamb and Jacob Anthony Rump. Miller never saw it coming. He was executed with a single gunshot to the back of the head at close range, a 9mm firearm. No warning, no chance. That was the price for talking to the media. But here's where things unravel for the killers. Just 3 days later, March 11th, 2002, Lamb and Rump found themselves in a police car chase through Anaheim. They tried to flee, jumped from the moving vehicle, and ran into an apartment complex. When officers closed in, the 2 men opened fire. The gun jammed. They surrendered. And when investigators ran ballistics on that weapon, it was the same 9mm used to murder Scott Miller 72 hours earlier.
A Bullard man who's part of a white supremacist gang, Aryan Circle, pleading guilty in the federal courtroom. 39-year-old Anthony Cochran right there is facing up to 20 years in federal prison after admitting to beating someone.
The Aryan Circle wasn't some small-time crew. This was a structured, violent white supremacist organization that operated with a code. You don't talk. You don't leave. And if you break those rules, there are consequences. Lamb and Rump went to trial together. July 10, 2007, a jury convicted both men on a staggering list of charges: murder, conspiracy to commit murder, committing murder for the benefit of a criminal street gang, possession of firearms by violent felons, street terrorism, and attempted murder of a peace officer from that shootout during the chase. The jury also found true the special circumstance that this murder was committed for the benefit of a criminal street gang. Rump was sentenced in October 2007, life without the possibility of parole. But for Michael Allen Lamb, the jury had a different recommendation. August 22, 2008, Lamb stood in a Santa Ana courtroom as the judge handed down his sentence. Death. He was 34 years old. A jury had recommended the death penalty months earlier, and now it was official. A third co-defendant, Billy Joe Johnson, the man who allegedly lured Miller to that alley, was charged separately in August 2007. At the time, Johnson was already serving 45 years to life for a completely separate gang-related murder from 2004. Prosecutors sought the death penalty against him too. Senior Deputy District Attorney Ebrahim Baitier prosecuted the case. Scott Miller made a choice to speak. He thought a disguised voice and a hidden face would protect him. But in a world where loyalty is enforced with bullets, those visible tattoos sealed his fate. He was executed by the very people he once called brothers. And the weapon that killed him? It came back to haunt his killers in less than a week. That's the thing about violence. It doesn't stay hidden for long.